That's a big ass fish. That's a monster, Mike. Good job.
And that's why we're obviously outdoorsmen. And we are back, guys. I'm Mike with Obviously Outdoorsman. Thank you for tuning into the Obviously Outdoorsman podcast and these First Light Talks. If you're new to the First Light Talks and the Obviously Outdoorsman podcast, check out all of the 50 other ones I've done so far, all on YouTube, all on Spotify. You can check them all out there. All right, today's podcast we are talking about 3 reasons you're getting busted by deer. There's 3 main ones we're going to go over today: wind, movement, and access. All right, the biggest factor in hunting is if deer know you're there. And if deer know you're there, you're probably never going to see them. Or if you do see them, you're never going to get a shot at them because they know you're there. All right, the first and most talked about is the wind. All right, that's pretty much self-explanatory. You do not want to hunt bad winds. I'm going to draw a little diagram for you right over here. All right, let's say this is your tree stand. And you're here. Right? This is you, Ted the hunter. All right, let's say deer are bedded over here in the thick stuff. If the wind is blowing like this, it's not a good wind to hunt. If the wind's blowing like this, it's a good wind to hunt. Or literally, if your wind is blowing anywhere but there, it's a good wind to hunt. So a little more in depth on that. Let's say their food source is over here. We'll erase that for you. Let's say this is their food source. The deer are bedded here. You're sitting here on a transition area waiting for them to walk out of their bed to go to their food source. If your wind's blowing this way and you know the deer is going to walk like this, it's not good. So although you have a good wind for their bed, when they get up to go to their food, they're going to bust you and not walk this way. They might smell you right here and your shot's over here, so they're going to loop all the way around to hit that food source or just never come to the food source during daylight hours. A good wind for that would either be straight like this, straight away from there, literally anywhere that your wind is not blowing in this direction that deer is going to be. It could be blowing that way, it could be blowing that way, 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 that way. This is your red zone. If your wind's blowing anywhere towards there, it's not a good wind to hunt, and you should probably stay out of the woods. Or if you're able to have multiple stands on this property, if you have another stand over here on this wind that's bad for this stand, it'll be a good wind for this stand, and you could still intercept them coming out of their bedding area going into their food source. All right, so that's the wind. That's the most talked about hunting bad winds, because if they get up and they smell you there on one bad wind, they might not bed there for a long time. They know there's some type of danger there, and especially if you're hammering that spot, let's say 5 times in a week, they're really not going to be there. You're going to have them consistently. You hunt a bad wind, they smell you, and then if they smell you 2-3 times in 1 week, you're just not going to see that deer for a while. So that's why the wind is the most talked about aspect of you don't want to do while hunting. I'm going to skip number 2 and hop to number 3 because I think number 2 is the most important thing that people look over. So let's talk about number 3. Access. Your access is probably garbage. So let's use the same diagram over here. If your access is garbage and you're kicking deer out before you're anywhere near your hunting spot, and this happens a lot during the morning hunts, and this is why a lot of people don't hunt morning hunts. They mainly hunt the afternoon. Let's say you park over here and the deer's bedded here. If you walk through their bedding area or by their bedding area to get to your stand and you're spooking deer going in, that's obviously not a good thing. Most of the time, that'll be on an afternoon hunt. But on a morning hunt, let's say the deer are up in this field feeding all night. If you're parked down here and you have to walk that field edge, and let's say the wind's blowing into that field where they're feeding, or if you just got to walk right through it to get to your tree stand because you're hunting the edge, and you're kicking deer out, it's not a good thing. You need to have good access going into your stand. The biggest thing is not letting them know you're there. So take the long way in. Even if it's a mile, 2 miles out of the way, if that's the way to get in there without the deer knowing you're there, that's the way to do it. Don't take the 5-minute walk where you're going to bust deer every single time. If you have to loop around a half hour, loop around a half hour and just put in the extra work so you go in undetected and you have a successful hunt. Let's go into the last one, movement, and I think that's the most important thing. All right, the way deer's eyes are set up, it's much different than humans. All right, we have 20/20 vision. Deer they have more of a 20/60 vision. So where we lack in, I believe, rods, they have more rods. And where deer have a better, how can I put this? Deer can see much better at night, so they have more rods and cones, I believe. But their vision is more 20/60, so although they can see in them twilight hours better and see a lot more in their peripherals, their sharpness isn't as good. So as we can see stuff very, very good within 20 yards, deer really can't. It's a little blurry. So what they're looking for is more movement. So let's say you're in a tree stand and they're coming in on a string. They are not looking up. They don't see you. You go to draw back and they immediately look up at you. They're looking for movement. You moved. But a lot of times, if you ever locked eyes with a deer and it feels like you're staring into their eyes for eternity, they're trying to figure out what you are. All right? For all they know, you're a raccoon moving, or a squirrel, or an owl, or a bird, or anything else that's not danger. But when they see a 6-foot man standing in a tree that's not supposed to be there, they're going to spook. So let's just say you get busted trying to draw, and you are stone cold still at 15 yards. He might not completely spook. He might just flicker his tail, take a couple steps back, and when he goes behind a tree, you're able to draw back and get a shot at him. But a lot of times when they lock eyes with you, they don't know what they just saw. So if you're just stone cold still, you may still be able to save that hunt or that shot. Maybe they're 30 yards out, you need them at 20. Maybe they're 60, you need them at 20. As long as you don't move, the deer aren't going to see you. They're not looking for people. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for any type of movement. Any type of movement could be a coyote moving, you moving, anything. A bear, whatever it may be, that's what they're looking for. They don't necessarily go around the woods looking for hunters. Only problem with that is with movement, deer have a great memory. So if you have a 4, 5, 6-year-old whitetail on a specific piece of woods, and especially public land, if there's one dumb hunter in the woods, it could mess it up for every other hunter, and all these deer are going to be walking around the woods doing this. And I have a lot of spots on public land where there's just all the does on camera just looking straight up. Because now they're associating corn with tree stands and people in the tree moving. All right? And that's no bueno. So that might mess it up for you to where, let's say you get busted one time by this buck when he was younger. Maybe a little 4x4, like 2-year-old buck. He's not dumb. He's going to remember that. And he might 2, 3, 4 times get spooked the same exact way looking up by tree stand hunters. They're going to know to look up. Because any little movement and they see you, that's just game over. So that's the biggest thing with movement. And that goes back to going through the field. There's many times going through the woods where I'm walking or stalking and I'm walking. I see a deer and I just stop. I don't move at all. The deer could be 60 yards away, it could be 20 yards away. I'd be walking down a very thick trail sometimes, a deer stands up at 10 yards, and all they did was hear things, and they stand up and they're just looking. And they may look at you because they might see like the top end of your figure, but as long as you don't move, they might just think you're a tree. They can't see colors like we do, but they can see much better in low light conditions. They can see much farther than we can, and they could just see that movement very well. That's how deer are built. They're built to look for movement, not so much sharpness. They're not going to just go, that's a bear. That's a human. If you get busted and they pick their head up and they look at you and you just stop in any motion you are in, you may still be able to save it. All right. So these 3 reasons why you're getting busted is a big thing that you must look out for in your hunts. Wind movement, and access. Just try and keep that in mind, especially when a deer picks his head up, locks eyes with you, and he's just staring at you for 5 minutes straight, maybe trying to stomp his foot. Big old nanny does do this a lot. All they're trying to do is get you to move. They lock eyes with you, and they stomp, stomp. They do a little snort wheeze. They're trying to get you to move. They're trying to get you to flinch. There's many times where I'm in a tree stand, they lock eyes at me, and they blow the whistle at me. They stomp, and I'll flinch a little bit sometimes. Or if I'm with someone new and they flinch and they move, that's when they spook. But if you're just rock solid, and they're stomping and staring at you, they might pace around a little bit, but give it 10, 15 minutes, and they'll settle down and come back in. I've had that many, many, many times in the woods where they don't like something, and then they reverse and come on in after they settle down. But they're always going to keep an eye on you, so you have to be careful. A lot of times they're feeding, and their eyes are up here like this. So just be careful on your movements. Every movement is slower, especially when they're within 30 yards. Everything's got to be slow. Everything's have to be meticulous, especially when they go behind a tree. That's when you move quick and draw on them. So just keep this stuff in mind while you are hunting, guys. I hope this video helped. If you're new to the First Light Talks, you can check all the other ones out on Spotify or YouTube. All the video versions of the first 40 are going to be on YouTube, and all the audio ones of the first 40 will be on Spotify. But now that Spotify updated it where I can upload these video ones up here on Spotify, I don't have to send you over to YouTube to watch all these new ones coming out. So if you like this content, guys, just share this with anyone that you think might benefit from listening or watching these videos. I'm just doing this for you. It's 12:15 at night. All right, this is for you guys to wake up to, listen on your way to work, on your way to your hunting spot, on your way to your fishing spot, and maybe just learn something. Even if it's a little 30-second clip that you didn't know, if it's more knowledge to you, that's why I'm doing it. So thank you guys for listening. I'm Mike with Obviously Outdoorsman. Stay stealthy.